Thomas's deck after glossing over his first place list. This is definitely a more niche deck to be playing right now. But as someone who can appreciate non-blue decks, I appreciate this deck. It seems to have like a lot of elements
Right. All
that
right, Thomas. So
draw.
what are we? For those that don't know, what are we playing today?
This is Dark Loam, or what some people call four-color Loam. So this is a kind of a mid-range control deck, what I would kind of describe it as,
Okay.
like a rock deck. So you play some prison elements. You have Chalice of the Void to play that role, and that does a really good job of shutting down a lot of things that decks and Legacy try to do with high velocity decks. So any of those decks that play all the blue 1-mana cantrips, they usually struggle with Chalice of the Void, or any of those other decks trying to be super efficient with low mana cost spells. And so you then also play like a bunch of very powerful 2-mana removal that's really good at answering most of the efficient creature threats in Legacy. So Delvers and Tarmogoyfs usually pretty good at like getting that kind of stuff. Punching Fire is great at getting lots of little weenies like Elves or in Death and Taxes. That card's great. As you saw in that last match, not so great against creatures that are greater than 3 CMC. So yeah,
that looked like a tough matchup.
that's my first time playing against a deck like that, and that seemed pretty bad. One interesting thing though is that like I've played against decks that play Mist Hollow Griffin, like Alurin or any of those decks, and that's also pretty bad because answering a 3/3 flyer that costs 4 mana is pretty tricky with this deck.
Oh yeah, Miss Hollow Griffin. Yeah, any bug decks in general actually have problems with that card. But so now, correct me if I'm wrong. You've had a lot of success. I know you've won the New Jersey Open with this deck. How long have you been on it?
How long have I been on it? I started playing it, I guess, about 7-8 months ago. It saw a lot of success in Europe early last year, and I saw the list there. I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. So I was playing Maverick at the time, had all the most of the cards, so I picked up the Chalice of the Voids and the Mox Diamonds and just gave it a ran. I thought it was a sweet deck. I loved it. I got to play Knight of the Reliquary, which is my favorite Magic card, and then Liliana the Veil, which is perhaps my second favorite Magic card. So all my sweet favorite Magic cards I got to play, and it seemed really strong. So I started playing it a lot, and then just doing well with it. So kept playing it.
Gotcha. That's cool. So I guess going over the card count here, if I recall, this is I want to say a pretty standard list. I think.
I would say it's pretty standard.
Yeah.
This is the exact 60 I ran in New Jersey, actually.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because I remember we've talked about this deck a lot online, and we both feel pretty comfortable with this 60. I can't really imagine changing a lot. There's some people that run like the Dark Depths combo. There's some people that run like Kasali Pride Mage in the main, and some other silver bullets here and there. It's mostly just meta calls where you want those to go. But I guess just going over what all the different things this deck can do. I like to say it's like a deck of engines because it has so many different engines. The idea is it's kind of deceptive what it's capable of doing because you have Life from the Loam, so you can actually just wasteland, your opponent's out of the game, which is a thing in the format. You can just recoup advantage to ramp into like big threats like Lilian Knight, and Mox Diamond is Accelerant, which basically it just lets you get to your turn 2 on turn 1, and this deck's best spells are all 2-drops.
Or 3-drops.
Or 3-drops,
But playing those on turn 2 is pretty backbreaking too.
Yes, absolutely. Or sometimes maybe in the turn 1 Knight. It's pretty...
I've got the turn 1 Knight before, I got the turn 1 Liliana. And then another big thing that Mox Time allows you to do is it allows you to get a turn 1 Chalice of the Void, which can be really great. And as you said, like if you're on the draw and you have a Mox Diamond, suddenly you just stole a turn and you're on the play equivalent.
Or if you're on the play and just have the turn 1 Chalice, you can. That's just actually game over for
a lot of decks.
Half the format. So
I mean, even just playing like a turn 1 Dark Confidant is usually very good, or turn 1 Sylvan Library.
Yeah. One thing I really liked about this deck is actually how well it plays around Chalice of the Void, and actually kind of like punishes people for playing these like 1-drop blue decks with 4 Brainstorm, 4 Ponder. Like it almost just pushes that deck pretty hard in a controlling field.
Yeah, any of those fair decks that like try and play that game, it's very, very good against. And it's got the ability to go super long. It's got a lot of card draw and Sylvan Library and Dark Confidant. As you mentioned, it's got the Wasteland, Light from the Loam, Night of the Reliquary, Engine 2.
So what are some of the things like we have a little Green Sun Zenith engine?
Yeah, just like a touch of Green Sun Zenith. So like I like to think of this deck as like kind of a little bit of Maverick, a little bit of Jund, and a little bit of kind of Chalice of the Void sprinkled in there. So the Green Sun Zenith has a couple roles here. So number one, it can actually act as a turn one play with Dryad Arbor. So you can use Green Sun Zenith to search for 1 green and use X0 and find Dryad Arbor, which basically then acts as a Llanowar Elves. One of the great things about that is that you don't need to have 4 Llanowar Elves or 4 Noble Hierarch or Dark Triumph, the Third Summons or whatever you would play otherwise. Because then when you do play Chalice of the Void, Green Sun Zenith on 1 or whatever you would have on 1 in its place would be shut off. But since you have Green Sun Zenith, you can go for 1 for Dryad Arbor if you don't have another turn 1 play. But if you have a Chalice of the Void, then Green Sun Zenith can go and get you something else, like one of your Silver Bullets. The two main deck being Scavenging Ooze and Gaddock Teeg. So this is great for eating graveyards, and then Gaddock Teeg is obviously great against a lot of combo decks and also against Miracles. So Gaddock Teeg is phenomenal against Storm, Elves, surprisingly, because it shuts off Natural Order and Green Sun Zenith, and also against Miracles. Also in the sideboard, I play like one other Green Sun Zenith target, Reclamation Sage. This could be a Kasali Primate or Reclamation Sage, just depending on what you prefer. And then finally, Green Sun Zenith allows you to find another Night of the Reliquary, or find a Night of the Reliquary if you need that. So that's nice to have a few more copies, pseudo copies of your finisher.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It is worth noting that there is some dysenergy in the deck between the Green Sun Zenith, the Chalice, and the Teeg. But in my experience of playing this deck, you usually resolve these before Teeg even factors into an equation.
Usually that's true. So usually the Chalice will come down before Teeg, or usually if I have a Green Sun Zenith,
You're
I can get
not
Teeg,
really
yeah.
likely to get Teeg, and even when you do, it's usually
or
more
if you
backbreaking.
or if you Green Sun Zenith for Teeg, then that works just fine, and then you shuffle away your Green Sun
Right.
Zenith. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
then
that's
it's
a good
gone.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other thing's like Liliana. So Liliana is phenomenal in this deck. She can be a tiny bit tricky to cast, and you have to like search carefully to get the double black.
Right.
But she works really well with Punishing Fire and Light from the Loam. And since you have a Mox admin, she can often come down early enough to just completely take over a game. If she comes down on a board where your opponent only has 1 creatures or no creatures, Liliana the Veil is usually going to win you that game.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
She's one of those planeswalkers that I feel that you often get to ultimate her.
Yeah.
I like often just ultimate people and just use it as like,
That is a
Double
nice
Stone
out
Rain.
to a permanent that you can't answer with Abrupt Decay.
True.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
I find I really, really like Lily against Miracles, where you just have these really long grindy games where like they have a resolve counterbalance top, and you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna tick up Lily until I make you sack one of those permanents, and then I'm gonna go start casting my spells.
Yeah.
I also like how you sort of have like a card advantage engine with.
Oh, you have a lot of those. Like here,
Yeah.
here. So like Light from the Loam with the cycle lands.
Yeah, Loam. It's like the Loam engine, if you will, is nice. I like that like both the Punishing Fires and the Loams you can pitch to Lily's +1, and you can just actually recoup the card loss.
Yeah.
Bob is. This is almost like Bob's deck. Like this is.
Yeah.
I think he's the only creature that made it from the original aggro loam list, which was like a seismic assault deck almost.
Yeah, I never played that deck, but I think you might be right. The other thing that Dark Confidant does that is great is that like you can clock people with him. He gets in for 2 every turn, comes down early, and the other reason that Dark Confidant or Bob is so great in this deck is because if you look at all the spells, you've got some 3s in there, but your curve tops out at 3, and then you have a large number of 0 casting cost spells. You have 4, 0, 0. So that means when you actually look at the CMC of the deck, it's ridiculously low. Even though you have some like plays that cost like a fair amount of mana, like Green Sun Zenith for Night of the Reliquary costs 4, but your CMC is somewhere like hovering around 1, I would guess. So that means usually Dark Confidant is not dealing you a lot of damage in a game.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So as far as sideboard, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna should I put this up? Or?
Yeah, here we can pull this up here.
Yeah. So for terms of sideboard, So I play 2 Thought Seizes because sometimes the Chalice of the Voids need to come out, and then you need something to do on turn 1. Also, against really fast combo decks, you can bring in Thought Seize and Thought Seize them even while you keep Chalice of the Void in, because some combo decks will kill you so fast that you just need to be able to do something on turn 1 to slow them down or stop them.
You need to get a turn 2, ideally.
These are 3 Hate Bears you can bring in. These are good against Storm. Also, Thalia is actually really good against Miracles. You play a Karakas, and so just playing a Thalia and then keeping open a
Banana
Karakas.
boo boo.
Yeah, you're just like, I'm just going to keep my 2-1 and just get after you for 2 a turn and just play the slow game like that while you're doing your card advantage stuff with Sylvan Library or Life from the Loam and cycling lands.
Makes sense. Yeah.
You can get swarmed by creature decks that kind of play out creatures too fast, or you can get overwhelmed by elves that swarm you. So a couple Golgari Charms is good for that. You know, it's got versatile cards, it's got a couple different modes.
Yeah.
Maelstrom Pulse. So Abrupt Decay only hits CMC 3 or less, and as you mentioned earlier, Liliana can do some work cleaning up permanents that you can't otherwise answer. But sometimes they just play a big creature early, and you're in real trouble. So Maelstrom Pulse is like a concession to that, but you only have the one. So, and then Toxic Deluge is just another thing. Like if people are swarming you early, or if the board gets out of control, you can have a little bit of problems. So Toxic Deluge is really good to clean that kind of stuff up. I run 3 Leyline of the Voids because this deck really likes to shut down people's graveyards for decks that are doing really unfair things, such as kind of like Reanimator or Dredge. So I found this card to be really good in this deck, especially since it's one-sided. It's asymmetric graveyard hate.
So it doesn't affect our Knight.
It doesn't affect our because it doesn't affect our Knight, doesn't affect our Loams, doesn't affect our Punishing Fires, but it still stops their graveyard. So these 2 over here, these are tokens. These 2 over here are kind of like flex slots, if you will. Garruk's really good against Miracles. You'd be surprised at how often just making a 2/2 Wolf every turn is good enough against Miracles. Also, if you notice, there's a lot of like troublesome permanents here for Miracles to deal with. So Chalice of the Void's permanent. Chalice of the Void's a permanent, Liliana's a permanent, and Sylvan Library's a permanent. So just bringing in another permanent that's not a creature that they have to answer overloads their council sessions. Because usually they only play 1 or 2 maybe post-board, and so they can't deal with them all. Centaur Vinecrasher is something that I'm testing out. This is a new card from the Commander set, and I was trying to see if it's good against like Shardless Bug, because again, it's a CMC above 3, so bug decks are going to have trouble answering it. It seems like it could be good in the mirror, just go over the top, and also just against other things like that. So I'm still testing it. I actually have yet to cast it, but I want to.
Oh man,
so.
just wait. It's gonna feel so good when you do, and you get him. So I've beaten an Emrakul with that card before.
Oh really?
Yeah.
That must feel pretty good.
Pretty spicy. Also, one thing to note about Karuk, I bring him in against Shardless Bug too, because
I did that too. Yeah.
He fights Baleful Strix, Shardless Agents, and Deathrite Shamans, and flips and makes tokens that
You then sacrifice to get
Tarmogoyfs
nice. Yeah.
cannot beat.
True.
So the 1/1 Death Touch, they cannot get through
Yeah,
efficiently.
That's a good point. I definitely bring him in against Shardless Bug too. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, this Reclamation Sage is just something you can bring in to have a searchable artifact enchantment removal.
Yeah, I commonly do this against decks that I'm worried about Blood Moon, because like a lot of times if we even think there's a Blood Moon, we can just get a basic forest.
Yep.
And that way our
You always have green sun. Yeah, you always have forest in the green sun zenith. Yep, that's absolutely true. Yeah, so if you're talking about like some like places like like tuning it to your local meta or whatever, the main deck 60 I found is really tight. So again, like that main 60 was like these cards up here. I found this really tight.
I'm 100% in agreement. You have to have a really good reason to change one of these cards, I think.
Yeah, so like everything there serves a very good purpose. Everything there is super impactful and has a very specific role to play in a lot of matchups. So one card that could be a flex slot is a 4th Abrupt Decay. I found it incredibly useful to have it main. But if you wanted to,
even Screws, I think, is borderline cuttable.
I feel like for me, you can mess a little bit with the configuration of lands. Like you can drop one of these lands and like either add another utility land or add a swamp if you're worried about lots of Blood Moons in your meta. But other than that, like I feel that these are really the only 3 cards you can really mess with, in my opinion.
I agree.
I can see an argument for taking out Teague if you don't have a lot of Elves, Storm, and Miracles in your meta. But that's a rare meta when you don't have any of those.
I think it's a good catch-all. Like it's probably worth having. And I definitely think it's worth running in the main.
Did you remember to introduce him as New Jersey champion?
Yeah,
Thomas Keating?
Yeah.
the champ.
Okay, good.
My man.
Necessary.
Yeah, I was rooting for you pretty hard at that event.
Yeah, I recall you being like outside like the feature match playpen area, you going crazy all the
Why
time.
didn't
Yes.
you?
And I
Stadium
recall-
as well?
I should have.
Yeah, you definitely should have.
Because then I could have punishing fired in return. So the thing is that I actually never actually got up to enough mana to do that, so it wouldn't have mattered. But it could have mattered, and so I should
I
have done it.
mean, you should have done it.
Yeah.
That part's important. Okay, that's fine, as long as you know.
Yeah, I realized that, but it also didn't happen to matter that game. But since it could have, I should have done it. Yeah, that's right. You're right.
So if I recall, when you went up to New Jersey to play in the Open, I remember you saying you weren't even planning on playing the second day. You were just going to play for funsies. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So I was visiting my girlfriend's. I was visiting my girlfriend's parents with her for Thanksgiving, because the New Jersey Open was the weekend after that, and so she went shopping with her mother, and so I snuck away to play Legacy for a day. And the next day we were planning to like do some errands, spend some time with her folks, and then drive back to Washington D.C., which is roughly where we are right now. And so since I was doing so well, I told her that I couldn't do that. And we had-
I mean, doing so well translates into going undefeated day one.
yeah. No, actually, I had a defeat day one.
Oh, you did?
I think I was 8-1 day one.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember
just 8-1.
what I lost to.
I remember seeing a post that you were. When did your loss come in? Was it the last?
Pretty late. It might have been like the 7th or 8th round.
Because I remember you saying you started off like 6-0.
I was definitely 6-0 at one point. I forget exactly. It was either the 7th or 8th round, I
Right.
believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing that's worth mentioning about this deck that I also play this deck for the people that don't know, and the one thing I absolutely love about this deck is its position in the meta right now. It's so good. Like every single one of these cards is a problem for so many different decks. Even though it's like a non-blue deck, doesn't have brainstorm, right? But it has ways to interact with every single like popular deck right now. And I feel really good sitting at winning tables, like seeing like Miracles, Death and Taxes, Delver decks in the winning tables. I'm perfectly fine sitting around these kind of guys. Or at least from my play experience.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Like, but a lot of the popular tier 1 decks or like tier 1.5, whatever.
Right.
A lot of those decks that people are currently playing a lot of, this deck's great against. I have experienced that this deck can struggle a little bit with certain other like fringe decks.
Yeah.
So anything that plays kind of the non-standard creatures in Legacy can be a problem, as you saw in that match
as
where
I
I got
saw
completely
last
destroyed.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see your deck tech with that gentleman. So you
Yeah,
should try and
yeah.
rope him into doing one.
We'll probably get one pretty soon. Now, as far as like bad matches, what are you trying to dodge?
I'm trying to dodge that deck that he played against
Eldrazi.
against Kid. That was a bad matchup. Other things that I found bad is like I found that like the Allurin is not very good.
That sounds miserable.
Because
Because they're
they can-
combos creatures, so they just
yeah.
look at your Thalia and go, oh yeah, that's cute.
So
Kill you.
they can combo off and just kill you. Also, just playing a bunch of Mist Hollow Griffins can be a problem too. Other than that, you're kind of okay facing pretty much anything. There are like really good matchups, and then there are like matchups that are not as good. But
I think Burn's really bad.
oh, sorry, yeah, Burn is the worst matchup.
Yeah, I think
Burn is almost unwinnable.
Burn is like mulligan to Chalice or Thalia and get there.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you have a lot of Burn in your meta, just run some Zurin Orbs in the sideboard.
Zurin Orb, okay.
So I don't do it because I don't face Burn that often, and I just kind of like decided like, you know what, Burn's gonna be my like
Yeah, that's-
80-20 or 90-10 matchup where I just lose it all the time if I play it, and then just hope to dodge it. But if you like are playing in a local meta and you have a couple friends that like to bring their Burn deck, just run 2 Zurin Orbs in the sideboard, and
Problem solved.
well, not really, you have to drive, but.
Yeah. So I think at that point, I would just want to accelerate a night out, get Zurin Orb, and then cross your fingers.
Yeah. I mean, the Zurin Orb plus Life from the Loam is pretty good. It's hard to beat.
Yeah, that does sound really good.
Cool.
All right, Tom. Well, that's probably as much time as we got.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing your deck with us.
For sure, of course.
you know, could not. I was so ecstatic when you took down me in New Jersey. Well, I was happy that you top 8'd, and I was crossing my fingers you would go far, and you did not disappoint me, sir. That was quite a long ride.
I really appreciate you supporting me. And actually, for those people who watch the New Jersey stream or who want to like go back and look at the archive footage, you can actually see Corey standing there in the background
Yes.
for a lot of the top 8 matches, just like holding his belly. I don't think he realized that he was on camera. He was on the shot, but like every time Peg pans out, you can see him like holding his
Yeah,
belly.
I'm
just
like
standing
gasping,
there.
like, ooh.
Cool.
All right, Tom. Well,
Yeah.
good luck for the
Thanks,
next
man.
round, man. And I'll see you around, dude.